Welcome to this Wisconsin Council of Churches webinar. Today, our presentation is on project recovery. Our presenters are Jane Gaffney and Kim Sines with WISCAP, and they'll be sharing with us information about COVID-19 resources and additional information about the cycle of what happens in a community-wide crisis. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jane and Kim, and we're looking forward to learning from you.
Thank you, Carrie, for having us. It's very much appreciated. So my name is Jane Gaffney, as she said, and I've been working in crisis and disaster since I had figured out it was 27 years. So I think I've found my niche. So we're going to give you a little bit of background on what project recovery is, and you can go to the next slide. And thank you everyone for joining us. This is really an important grant program to me, and it's very valuable, and I hope you will see the value as we go through. So we're going to talk about what is project recovery, the definition of a disaster, characteristics and repercussions of a disaster, and the key concepts of the crisis counseling program, that's CCP. You might hear me use terms that are acronyms. So, and then we're going to talk about resilience, and Kim is going to cover her session, part of the session on collaborative, I'm sorry, I'll let her do that. Anyway, this is what I'm going to cover. So you can move on to the next slide. So Project Recovery is a crisis counseling program, and it's FEMA funded, and the funding becomes available to the state when a major disaster is declared by the governor, and then federal assistance is requested. The presidential declaration then allows for the Stafford Act to be activated, and that is what allows the crisis counseling funding to come from FEMA through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Agency at the federal level to the state, and then the state applies for that grant, and an agency is chosen to run the crisis counseling program. The agency that is currently working this program is Wisconsin Community Action Partnership, and we have a team in Green Bay for Brown County. We have a team in Milwaukee. We have a team in Madison for Dane County. We have a team in Rock and Walworth counties. We're also adding Southwest Community Action Programs, and that will cover all of Wisconsin. They are going to be working specifically with farmers because that's their specialty. They have been working with farmer suicide, and this was a natural grant award to help them with their efforts. So, and SAMHSA has done all of the training materials, and we have several trainings throughout the program so that the crisis counselors who are hired from the area they live in and work in the area they live in, so that it's basically more of a neighbor helping neighbor rather than a counseling program. And you can move on to the next slide. And I talked about it being declared as a disaster. That is when the Stafford Act takes effect and the crisis counseling funding becomes available. The federal government has deemed that COVID-19 is a disaster nationwide, and you can read about the definition there. But the second bullet point, a disaster creates a collective need that overwhelms local resources and requires additional assistance. So that's where we come in, and the crisis counseling program is brought about. You can go on to the next slide. So the characteristics and repercussions of a disaster, We have worked with Project Recovery in several other formats for other disasters, which in 2007, 2008, and 2018 were floods and covered a specific demographic area. Now this disaster declaration covers the whole state, although we do have the target areas in Green Bay, Milwaukee, Madison, some of the more affected areas with more prevalence of the confirmed virus. So every disaster is different. This is completely different than anything we've ever dealt with before. And trauma affects individuals and the community. I'm sure you've all seen this. Trauma is a result of being witness to a disaster, and we've all are living through it. Everyone who experiences a disaster is affected by it in some way. And commonly people do pull together during and after a disaster, and that is ebbing and flowing with this disaster. As you know, sometimes people will pull together and other times it seems like people are so isolated. Stress and grief are common reactions to uncommon situations. I'm sure a lot of your parishioners are suffering from stress, grief, isolation, all of those things, and those are common. They're reacting the best way they know how. And people's natural resilience will support individual and community recovery. People have naturally gotten through many of their own traumas and disasters, and we have found that their ability to overcome some of these problems that we've been faced with, the isolation, the mandates, the uncertainties, their natural resilience does most of the time pull them through. You can go on to the next slide. So when they become overwhelmed, that's where the crisis counseling program comes in to help support them and help just boost that natural resilience. So the CCP model is strength-based. It's anonymous. We don't take names. We will return phone calls, and that's really the only identifying information that we ever need to talk to a person. And we don't take names and all that demographic information. We just count for our reports back to FEMA, basically the contact, and that's it. It's outreach oriented. With COVID, it's been a little bit more challenging, but we are doing outreach. The Milwaukee team has done outreach based on the Wisconsin Rental Assistance Program, and they've outreached to all of the people who have applied for that assistance. So, and they realized that those were people that most likely were in need of some counseling. So they're doing the outreach that way. In Dane County, Kim Sines is the team leader. She had done in the immediate services program, she has done amazing outreach to the special populations. So like churches and the Jewish community and Girl Scouts and college students. And so they've done a different approach, but both approaches have been so successful. We're culturally aware. We have various crisis counselors who have different backgrounds, and we we counsel or talk to individuals from every culture. It's conducted in non-traditional settings. Right now it's non-traditional because we're using mainly the phone. And we're hoping that once the mandates are lifted and restrictions are lifted, that we'll be able to do more door-to-door outreach and groups and things like that as we become more relaxed with and as the COVID virus hopefully comes to a slowdown. It's designed to strengthen existing community support systems. So we're not here to take over anyone's job, or we're not here to, you know, be the one and only crisis counseling program ever. We are here to strengthen the community support systems that are already there, and helping individuals reach out to those community supports. And we will sit with them and make a phone call, or coach them through some difficult situations that they're going through. And again, it is based on an assumption of natural resilience and competence. So next slide, please. And Kim will talk about this in a minute, but I just wanted to finish up my portion with saying that Project Recovery, like I said, was active in 07, 08, 2018, and now with the COVID. And this program is nationwide. It's by state. At the current time, all 50 states do have a crisis counseling program in effect. And we recently, actually as of yesterday, we are in the regular services program grant. So that will extend us through June of next year. So our crisis counselors will be working everywhere in Wisconsin that we can reach out to people and make sure that everyone is being taken care of, and some of the stress and some of the concerns of this time period that we're in is alleviated, and we will help them with stress reactions, and Kim will get more into that, but that's what the Project Recovery is all about. And I'm going to turn this on over to Kim. There she is.
Hello. I just wanted to, and I just lost my earring. How did I manage that? I just wanted to open with some words of thanks. You all have been doing incredible work, and you find yourself leading in an unprecedented time with either little guidance or too much guidance, and often conflicting information. As ministers, you're asked to do the impossible every day. You face challenges with church leadership and your congregation, and financial uncertainty, and now life in a pandemic. I just want to acknowledge your courage, resourcefulness, and commitment. It's not unnoticed, and it's very much appreciated. I'm going to start off with what we call in the CCP as the graph. This is one of the more used and important visuals that we've been able to gain a lot of work with. This kind of shows the graph as far as how the community aligns and works in a natural disaster. And there's of course going to be some similarity with COVID, but you'll see in a natural disaster, you have the warning, the threat, you have the impact, whether it's a flood, tornado, a natural earthquake, anything like that. And with a natural disaster, what's been easier to work with community-wise is you only have one impact, and then you have a good year plus where you're working on rebuilding and helping the community. And with COVID, it seems like we keep getting impacts, and there isn't really any end in sight. And we don't know when that period of reconstruction and rebuilding is going to take place. And you can see we've got the impact and then the heroic phase. In COVID, I think everyone remembers when people would cheer as the healthcare professionals from New York would go on the street, and people would, cheer them on going into the hospital. And I don't know if you guys remember, but I loved the scenes from Italy when people were singing because they were in quarantine, and they would go out on their balconies and sing to people in their towns and communities. And those are kind of the heroic efforts that we were able to see, and which kind of led us into the honeymoon period, which everyone was kind of, we're all in this together, and people were coming up with great ideas as far as how to communicate during COVID, whether it was, pictures in their window or their physical distancing, the way they would make that work for them. So we have seen some of these periods in COVID. I think we can all relate to the disillusionment period, which kind of has rivaled the impact phase when we're in COVID. We're up and we're down, and we're frustrated with our leaders. We're frustrated with people who aren't taking things seriously. We're maybe frustrated with those that are taking things over seriously. It's very up and down time. And I really like the term that I've heard during this called the Corona coaster. And I think that really gives us a good visual about how we've all felt during this. The ups and downs, some days you're in the zone and have everything together, and other days you're struggling with just the most common activities. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about collective trauma. And there's precipitating events that create a shared experience. In communities, we've seen mass shootings, disasters, pandemics, wars, and violence that create a shared experience. And these events disrupt our sense of safety and security, and they cause confusion, and I think uncertainty is what a lot of us are experiencing. And I think we can all relate to that. And the speed at which COVID changed everything was really intense. And collective trauma takes many forms. It's stress you can't escape or make sense of why it's happening. And it can affect groups of people of any size, whether they experience the event firsthand or through the media. And it may hit you suddenly or build over time. Next slide, please. And who's disproportionately affected? And as you see, ministers, which are in the same category as behavioral health professionals, healthcare workers, first responders, teachers, essential workers, specific populations. People who help other people are really affected by collective trauma. And potential outcomes, mental distress, such as panic attacks, nightmares, feeling numb or depression, and changed attitudes and belief. Those who've lived through a traumatic event may form specific views as fears of outside threat, hopelessness about the future. And I think a lot of us, maybe I'm on the older end of our group, but remember older family members or friends talking about the depression and how that shaped and impacted their lives. And I'm hoping it will turn out to be a time, COVID will turn out to be a time when we can look back with pride simply because we got through this. And I can hear it now, can't you? We had to walk uphill to school, into the family room, both ways. Compassion fatigue is something that I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. Balancing personal challenges while helping others can be exhausting and overwhelming. And you're looked to as trusted leaders. People come to you and share a lot of information, intimate, personal, family, community, and that's a heavy burden to carry. Next slide, please. And ways to cope. The first one I'm going to talk about is telling your story. We often feel helpless in situations like this, and finding ways to empower yourself and others is really important. One of the ways you can do this is tell your story. What does living in this pandemic mean to you? How will it fit into the story of your life? How did this chapter begin? How do you want this chapter to end? And how will you begin a new one? Spend some time reflecting on these questions and journaling about them. And you can choose how you want to share your story. And that's an empowering experience. I think it's the Wisconsin Historical Society is doing a really cool project where they're working with people over the course of 1, 2, or 3 months, and you keep a journal about your experiences during COVID, and they put that into a project that they're working on, and I don't know, I can get some more information if anyone's interested, but it sounds like kind of a neat idea and a way to put your thoughts about this time period into something a little bit more permanent. Practice mental and emotional self-care. While it's always important to practice self-care, it's more important now than ever. The stress of the news, adjusting your daily routines, not having all of the coping mechanisms and stress management strategies that you used to. Making decisions about things that used to not give a second thought to. And we hear practice mental and emotional self-care. We hear a lot about self-care these days. And we need to figure out what that means for us. It doesn't have to be yoga or green tea or meditation, even though things are certainly great for a lot of people, and maybe you as well. But self-care means different things to different people. And I think that's really important to distinguish and find out what that means and what works for you. Sometimes saying no can be self-care. Lowering your expectations can be self-care. And self-care can change depending on where you're at in the corona coaster. Another helpful strategy is what I like is called doing what works for now. And it doesn't mean that this is the way you would always do it or ever do it. But if it's working for now, be satisfied with that. I also think self-care means giving yourself the same grace that you would give any other person going through this situation. The pressure of being the one who has all the answers has to be daunting. And the people that care about you accept you and don't need perfection all the time. Seeking out expert help. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I like that bit about when you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks drop down, and they always say, make sure you put yours on first, even before you put on your child's or partner's, because you have to be able to help people. You have to make sure that your things are working and that you're able to be in the right place to help anybody else. Next slide, please. I put this first definition in its entirety, but although I don't agree with the word easily, I think many resilient people recover and rebound from misfortune or change, but I don't think it's easy for most or any of us. Substantial change and certainly recovery comes from hard work, asking ourselves hard questions, and often moving forward, kicking and screaming. That's one of the things that resilience and why resilience is such a big part of the crisis counseling program. It's one of our core values, and we're working with individuals to foster their own natural resilience. And part of that is talking about what happened before and what worked for them before and what didn't work before, and making sure that they have people that they can depend on, you know, a social circle that's strong and maybe able to help. And next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about some strategies for resilience. And I think these are really helpful ones. Prioritize healthy relationships. Build a supportive network of people who care about you and spend quality time, even if it's virtually. We all know what it's like and we can recognize the people that you just feel exhausted after you're with them. And I know that you don't always have a choice whether to deal with those people, and probably do way more so, but you can certainly prioritize people that don't make you feel exhausted and people that just give you energy. And take care of your body. It's easier to maintain mental and emotional balance when you feel good. And again, we don't expect perfection and all organic meals and baking your own sourdough. And, you know, it sounds great, but that's not reality. At least it isn't for me. If it is for you, I'll give you my address and you can send some out. Avoiding negative outlets. And we look for healthy ways to process difficult emotions. And we know that negative outlets can be being immersed in too much media. I know that different times during my own personal Corona coaster, I definitely felt like I was glued to the TV or looking up statistics on the internet. And, you know, it's important to be informed, but you have to know when that's not good for you too, and set limits. Substance use may be a little bit increased, maybe a lot increased. And oftentimes that's a temporary fix and may make you feel better for a little while, but ultimately in the long run creates more problems than it solves. Being proactive can help us. We can't always control our circumstances, but we can take charge of our response. And breaking things into manageable tasks. You know, sometimes when I've been going through a hard time and everything seems really overwhelming, just making a really short, doable list and being able to check things off is really important for me. It may not even be big things, but when everything seems so overwhelming, sometimes just taking baby steps and starting with something small leads you to work on other things. Practicing self-awareness. It's important to take a step back if we're overstressed, understanding where our emotions are coming from, learning from the past as far as what worked before, and ask for help when you need it. I know that as leaders, like I said, you guys are tasked to do a lot and be the backbone of your congregation and communities. But oftentimes, I would say a lot of times that's just got to be really, really a lot. And you can ask for help. You're only going to be a better person for it. Next slide, please. And what we're seeing as crisis counselors with COVID is everyone has been affected in some way, whether they have gotten sick, whether they have known someone that has been sick, whether they've been unemployed, whether they've been underemployed, whether their work has been disrupted because they've got kids home and trying to homeschool along with working. And that's just got to be so daunting. And we've seen dramatic increases in depression and anxiety. And common emotions can manifest in 4 different ways emotionally, with denial, feelings of invulnerability, grief, anger, apathy, depression, or anxiety. Physically, weight change. I think at least I'm very familiar with the quarantine 15. I don't know about you. Chronic fatigue, sleep disruption, headaches. And cognitively, lack of focus, difficulty setting priorities, making decisions, recurring dreams or nightmares, or preoccupation with COVID. And behaviorally, change in activity level, increased alcohol or drug use, irritability, anger, frequent arguments. These are all things that have popped up and that we've seen with COVID. Next slide, please. And what are you seeing? And if you can share reactions that you've seen with parishioners, friends and family, with yourself, we're all ears. I don't know, like I said before, I don't know anyone that hasn't had some effect from the virus. And we're all struggling at times, depending on where we're at with our Corona coaster. So there's a lot going on for a lot of people.
Feel free to put any of these, the answers to any of these in the chat box, and we'll go through them as they come up and talk about them.
People are overwhelmed and don't know what to do. Yeah, I get that. And it doesn't help that we haven't had a lot of consistency, whether it's from our own leadership or from our governmental leadership. And we're hearing conflicting things, and it's hard to know what to do. It's hard for me to understand not listening to what our public health leaders are saying. They're the experts here, and I know that that's not always popular with people.
People are also fatigued and ready prematurely to move on. I'm not sure if you're referring to moving on to a different profession or suicidality, because we've seen some of that as well. It's, you know, and you may feel like that this is just too much for you. And we're here to support you as well as your parishioners. Anyone who's dealing with COVID, please feel free to reach out to us. Disagreements about how serious COVID is, disagreements about what is safe and what is not safe. Hard for congregation to hear each other. It is hard to hear someone else when you're going through a lot of your own issues. And our counselors are trained to turn their stories off just for that time that they're listening to a survivor and to just hear what they're saying. It's a very difficult skill to learn, but it can be done. The phrase I keep using is everything is harder. Whether struggles people already had or would have faced anyway are amplified by COVID. One response I'm seeing is a lot of short tempers in myself and in others.
Yeah, these are all very common reactions to what we're going through. And I think, you know, I keep using the term Corona coaster, but it's true. Some days you just, patience is easier. Your tone is better. Your spirit's lighter. And some days it just isn't. And I think personally with myself, it's because we don't have any type of defined end. We don't know how long this is going to be affecting our lives. We don't know how long we're going to have to wear masks and not see people that we care about and go to a concert or a game or something. It's a lot to process, and it's a lot of extra weight to carry. And if we can work on some of those skills as far as our self-care, if we can figure out what works for us for now, then some of this might be a little easier to work with.
There's a hole in my bucket that's draining faster and harder to fill these pandemic days. Absolutely. Absolutely. I wish there was a cork for that bucket and we could help you fill that. And maybe we can make it a bit smaller. And we do help people work on goals and goal setting and things like that. And we'd be happy to help you. And one thing I didn't mention is our service is free to anyone in Wisconsin. You can, and I believe if you want to go to the next slide, there are some resources available. You can go and look at some of these. Pull out the Compassion Resilience Toolkit. I know you all have your own toolkits and you pull from it daily, but this might give you a few more ideas. And then the next slide. So this is how to contact us. If you call 211, ask for Project Recovery. It's a free service. We don't charge anything. It's always done by the phone initially, and if you want to meet with someone, that's an option as well. So,
And I'm wondering if, Carrie, could you put me on screen for just a second?
Okay, so I'm going to just continue to read these. Lack of motivation, sense of helplessness. I joined too late, but to answer this question, my significant reaction for myself is fear. It is like I have made up false imaginative fears. I have asked for help and have attended therapy with both my pastor and an outside therapist who is also of pastoral background. Fear is a common reaction, and in not knowing who to believe and who to listen to, it adds to that fear. And what is safe and what is not safe. It is common. But what have you done in the past to get through those fears and work through, and what are you doing for yourself and your family to help keep them safe? Those are things that we would talk about. People are longing for normal and leaning that way more and more, despite the news and numbers. I hear pastors doubting their sense of reality because of behaviors they see around them versus the risks they perceive. It seemed like we were heading towards normal. And then we got this huge outburst of virus positive testing. And, I was thinking, okay, we're heading the right direction. But that goes back to that Corona coaster, as Kim calls it. And, there's going to be trigger events and there's going to be disillusionment, but there's always going to be some upground too. And you have to really, really struggle to find that upground some days, but it's there. And if you can just make it to through that next valley and keep moving ahead. I moved to a new congregation this summer in the midst of COVID, and I'm struggling with the usual transition challenges of being new to a community, along with trying to help lead a congregation whose leadership is older than I am. Through this, while at the same time sorting out my own struggles, I can't even imagine that, you depend on a new congregation to come together and to have events where you can sit down and meet people where they are. And I can't even imagine how much of a struggle that must be right now. As a pastor, I feel like leadership right now often means being the bad guy, telling people the hard truth and enforcing healthy precautions that people don't want to take. And people will do what people do. Some will take the precautions and some will not. Unless, there was a strict policing of it, we have to depend on each other to make the right choices and to encourage people to make the right choices, not only for themselves, but for others. Kim, did you want to add anything?
I did. I just wanted to share that when in doubt, not today, Satan, is always a good slogan to keep in your back pocket. I guess I would really be anxious and open to hear what you guys are seeing and what you're seeing in your congregations, with your family, with yourselves. Everybody's experiencing this part of history in a different way. And we're anxious to hear what you guys are seeing. And I know that we're seeing a lot of additional depression and anxiety, and we're seeing some regressive behaviors in children and adolescents. Isolation is affecting people in a lot of different ways. So I'm anxious to hear what you guys are seeing and what this means to you and your congregation.
Kim?
Yes.
We have some notes coming in on the chat.
Okay.
I'm seeing a ton of anxiety in our congregation and a ton of grief. Seeing anger, disappointment, frustration, fracturing our community. I see a lot of denial in my congregation.
Yeah, that's,
And I hate to say this because it's a tagline almost. It's common. Unfortunately, it's common, and everyone's going through it, and collectively. So we really have to support each other and build on our strengths. And remember that time you made it through a really difficult sermon or a really difficult funeral, and just remember those things and remember how you got through it and how you're going to get through this. There's I can't say it, politics. Yeah, politics is so much, causing so much stress right now. It's not even believable.
Well, and what I find really frustrating is, some of the simplicity of the response to the disaster has become political. Just something as easy as wearing a mask.
Right, and my comment too is politics about being open and about wearing masks. It's a huge controversy.
Yeah, and having this be an election year as well is just icing on the cake, isn't it?
A lot of deep desire on the part of parishioners to return to the sanctuary to worship in the way we did prior to COVID. I can understand that. I feel that myself.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting too how when we're in a natural disaster or a tornado or flood, we have a response that we follow. We have a protocol that we follow. And although individual, counties or rescue agencies do things maybe a little bit differently, it's still, we're all on the same page, and recovery is all on the same page. But a lot of time things are determined not by public health, but what people in leadership want us to do. And that's hard, not having a clear and consistent message and way to move forward through this. And I can only imagine how it's affecting your churches, but it's got to be really incredibly hard. And I just really feel for what you guys have been dealing with.
Someone says distress and uncertainty over school for children. The Dane County team has been working diligently, and the Rock Walworth team has been working with college students and Girl Scouts, and we're working with everyone that we can think of to bring some sort of calm and peace to the community.
There's a question, Jane, about offering any workshops for the congregation. That could be something that that you could share with the team members, and we could figure out how to make that work.
Absolutely. We have many crisis counselors that would be willing to do workshops for your congregations. Please, give us a shout and we'll set something up. We have the materials, we have the knowledge. We'd be happy to share that with anyone.
And I just wanted to, in closing on my part, I just wanted to thank you all for what you're doing for your communities and your congregations. There is no right way to navigate this time in history. And I hope you can please take care of yourselves. We've got if you can go to the next slide.
It's another person says, in conversation with pastors, I heard a lot of anger and frustration that people are not trusting leaders who are doing their very best. I also hear financial worry driving decision-making. We can help with resources for finances. We are very connected with our community action programs and some of the services they offer. So those are things that we can pass on to individuals who reach out to us, or if you would like us to contact any certain persons, we are more than happy to do that. Other challenges is not being able to visit people in hospitals or nursing homes and not provide funerals or limit the number. I can't even imagine that anxiety and frustration that you must be feeling. And just know that you're doing the very best you can with the situation at hand, and know that your presence is valuable. Just being, in the position that you're in, and knowing that people will reach out to you as they need you, and reaching out to them and letting them know that we're still here, we're still a community.
And we also, in addition to working with kids, we have some of our staff that are focused on elderly outreach. We have outreach that's focused toward essential workers, including healthcare, including grocery store, first responders. We have 2 bilingual Spanish-speaking crisis counselors that are connected to the Hispanic community and are available. We've got, in Dane County, at least right now, I think we've got 4 women of color as crisis counselors. So if there's a feeling where someone would rather talk to another Black individual, we have that available. They're also doing community outreach with the Black community, and we've got food pantries. We're covering a lot of territory, and
we also have male counselors, so it's not all us girls. We do have male counselors as well, if someone is more comfortable talking to a male. And they're asking if this important workshop is in Spanish for pastors and parishioners. Like I said, we do have brochures and handouts in Spanish, and we do have Spanish-speaking counselors in all areas of our program. So they would be available to do workshops as we could schedule them, or they could schedule themselves. So yes, please reach out for that as well.
And also, if there's something that you would be interested in with creating a group within your group, we would certainly be able to maybe continue to meet or have a different focus depending on what you were interested in learning about, or even just some time where you can share what you're feeling.
And what would an ideal size for a congregational workshop? 5,000, I think. Tongue in
Really,
cheek,
we can do just
any
about
size.
any size.
Yes, any all sizes. Yes. I was never a public speaker, but I was mentored, and now I'm a little more comfortable doing public speaking. So give me a microphone and I'll talk about whatever topic you want me to. But we have, Kim and I both have been trained to be trainers of the crisis counseling program. So we're pretty well versed. So please let us know what you would like us to work on with your congregation. And if we would be able to, we'd be happy to. I would be willing to host a Spanish language church presentation on our Zoom and record it for use by multiple congregations. Thank you, Reverend Carey. That would be wonderful. And that's something we can set up. We actually have a Spanish group out of all of our Spanish speaking counselors. And I will bring that to our team leader in Green Bay, Patsy Johnson. She's heading up that group. And I will have her work on that and get her in contact with you so that we can make that happen. And so on the screen now are some resources. You know, knowledge is power as far as I'm concerned. And the more you know about how people are dealing and how to, you know, a compassion resilience toolkit, just having those in your toolkit is huge, and knowing what to pull out next and what to talk to people about, that's huge. So please use the resources, please use my contact information or the project's contact information. We'd be happy to continue discussions.
And in closing, I just wanted to thank you for all you're doing for your communities and congregations. There's no right way to navigate this. And please take care of yourselves and ask for help. And make sure that you have people that, excuse me, make sure that if people need our help, including yourself, let us know. And we would love to get in touch with them. And thank you very much.
Yes, thanks everyone. It's very much appreciated. And thank you, Reverend Carey, for giving us the format to do this. And, you know, if you want us to come and speak to a congregation or to join in on a Zoom call or anything with you, we're more than welcome to do that. And please, you know, give me or call 211 a call and hook up to us. We are talking about doing this in a Spanish format as well. So that may be coming up in the future as well. So, and if you have any more questions, that's how you can contact us. And is there anything else anybody? The mug. Yes, not today, Satan. Yep. Thanks to everybody. Carrie, did you want to say anything else?
I want to thank both of you, Jane and Kim, for your time and your connections. We're very much looking forward to being able to offer this workshop in Spanish language within the next few weeks. So you can watch our website at wichurches.org or the Council's Facebook page to see when we make that available. Feel free to use these project recovery contacts as you need them to share them widely. Those of you who have registered for this webinar, you will get an email within the next day or so with the recording of this webinar on YouTube and a PDF of the presentation. If you have any questions or want information about our upcoming events, which include resources on how to preach in election season without blowing up your church, and a webinar Conversation of Hope with Diana Butler Bass and Brian McLaren, Registration for both of those are available at wichurches.org/events. Again, thank you so much, Jane and Kim. Thank you to all of you who have made time to learn and grow today. God bless.